Alright, so a few things about the next upcoming patch, I must say, that I still find that they need to do something about is that I think that like some of these weapons needs definitely to be looked at. That's for sure, right? Because, right, I think this thing right here, the Granatbisk, it's not gonna fit in a lot of cases because you have the Sturmpistol, which I mean, yeah, it's an anti-tank rifle, but it's virtually the same thing, right? Only that it's way more gimmicky. But for the matter of fact, it's way better than the current anti-tank weapons that you can get early on in the game. In the game, like overall, I would go to say. But the thing is, like, as fast as it just gets, as fast as you get anything remotely high tier in the game later on, there's just not gonna be much of a use for the Granatbisk as it is in Moscow. And that's why I'm a bit worried for the up and coming merge. Because these things that usually were in other campaigns that you kind of were locked down to using, like the weapons that actually made you have to use them, like the weapons that you were forced to use in certain campaigns because they simply were like the only thing you could have in that campaign at that time, are now gonna get overshadowed by weapons that virtually is just superior to it in all campaigns. A prime example is gonna be that the Panzerfaust is just gonna overlook, it's just gonna dominate pretty much top tier, right? Because it's just the Panzerfaust 100, it's just better than the Oberfahr or Oferar. I don't know how to say that, but Oferar, and it's just gonna be dominated, like it's gonna dominate basically everything because it just has so much range. You can set the range on it, and can it has such a high penetration value that it just doesn't matter. That's one thing for it all. But like the next thing is that the thing that I'm most worried for right now in the concurrent game is that vehicles are gonna get pretty much overshadowed. They're gonna be, it's just gonna be even worse than Normandy about like who has the best gun, you know, the bigger gun, so to say. Because as if in Moscow, right? The best thing you could get was the Panzer II, like the Panzer IV F2, which is like a what 75er, no, a 40 millimeter cannon. Yeah, but it's a 75 millimeter gun. But that was the best thing you could have here, and that was the only thing that could crack T-34s. But now when you make this thing not even the top tier anymore, but it's gonna be BR based. That means that the T-34 most likely is gonna get absolutely shafted by the 88 or like this long barrel 75 millimeter fucking Panthers. So this is why I'm saying that I am not really that excited for the merge. The merge feels like it's gonna make things worse for an somewhat sensical matter. The thing is, like, I also feel like a lot of things that this campaign, like, that's also another thing I can touch on right now. Rifles are gonna get completely merged. So, this is what I find that they are gonna have to look at before releasing the patch, I really have to say. Because right now, the best thing you can get in Moscow that's a quote unquote rifle, you know, they don't really have a full auto version in Moscow. Uh, is that the ZH-29 is pretty much your top tier weapon. But after the merge, as far as I'm concerned, the only way this thing will ever be used is if you haven't unlocked the next tier weapon. And that's the thing. I would go to say that this is just gonna become like a cat and mouse game. It's gonna become cat and mouse. Who has the bigger and better gun? And that's the thing, because like the ZH-29 is now gonna get so overlooked. Like it was overlooked already because of all its bad traits. Like it's having a lot of recoil, it's having like inconsistencies and a lot of other things. Like that's gonna be overshadowing this gun even more. But then you have also the G41 now. That's gonna make it like the G41 is not a good gun. I'm gonna say that right now. If you play aggressively in Enlisted, if you're an aggressive player and you're in the meat, so to say, the G41 is not your friend. It's not at all your friend. Because the only way you can be effective with the G41 is if you constantly sit counting in rounds about every 5 rounds to dump a new magazine in there. If you don't, you get punished for like sitting there feeding that gun one by one bullet, like on repeat. And that is why the ZH-21 is just better in this campaign. Like there's no doubt in my mind that the ZH-29 is better in this campaign. It's superior to the G41, right? Because it has maybe like what 10 less bullets, but with those 10 less bullets you still have a buttload of more versatility when it comes to actually being offense. And that's the thing. Like a gun that is limited to a certain playstyle will always fall short in a game. That is just the truth. Because if you have a gun that falls short to some specific gray area, and if you have a less, what would you call it, like if a gun is less specific on what it's supposed to do, it's way better, because like you can utilize it in so many more situations where it isn't just about you pushing the gun to its absolute limit when it comes to actually being able to do something with it. And that's another thing I want to also pick on, is that I'm not entirely sure, but I right now feel like snipers are also gonna become pretty much irrelevant. Anything that's low tier now, I can just say this right away. Anything that's low tier, that's like a bolt action, that's you know, anything normal, right? It's gonna get overlooked, because the fact that Gaijin pretty much made it so, at least as if they haven't changed this from the test server, you can just research the normal rifles and you can dip into the sniper class afterwards into this, like, or you can dip off the bolt action class to the sniper class. Meaning that virtually you are not gonna ever in this game, ever basically, gonna have to actually use the bolt actions, like the bolt action snipers. So they are never gonna get used, because simply you are not gonna be forced to actually try these weapons out, because they're not part of said tech tree anymore. Because now you can pretty much just skip the whole thing completely if you want to, because like there's nothing stopping you from doing so. The thing is also, I would go to say, is that the SMGs that currently is in the game that is already super duper strong, right? Like the Kirali, the PPD, the PPSH. There's probably like a few more, like I guess the Tommy gun that has like 100 rounds, maybe. I haven't used it. I can't put my opinion on it, because, well, quite frankly, I think these weapons are gonna become way more dominant in the game than they already are, for the simple reason of the fact that they are not unlocked to all campaigns at any time. The maps that usually were like specifically designed around a set amount of weapons are now mainly gonna probably be dominated by these guns that are like, I'm gonna be quite frank with you, pretty much overpowered to these campaigns. Because say if you go to, okay, the Soviets, you can apply the Soviets pretty much anywhere because the Soviets doesn't really have any major difference between like Berlin and Moscow. Like they are basically the same thing. But the thing is, like, if you look at the Americans, which is like Normandy and what? Tunisia and I guess Pacific, but Pacific we can't really count in, right? Because yeah, I think that we're gonna lock that out for the up and coming patch pretty much. But I would say that these two campaigns are gonna get absolutely like they're gonna become a cesspool, right? That's what I'm gonna say it as, because in this campaign in Tunisia, right, like SMGs aren't that strong because there's not a whole lot of weapons you can get here that's actually like exceeding those limits where you can say like, oh yeah, it's gonna make the game like a cakewalk, right? Because the Tommy gun, it's not that good because of the one simple reason. Tunisia maps are massive, right? They're like ginormous. So bolt actions is always like a must-have in Tunisia for that one particular reason. But say then if I take the M1928A to Normandy, yeah, that's a whole different story now, isn't it? Because now you have 100 round Thompson that you play on maps. Yeah, you have it for the paratrooper squad. Now you have a 100 round Thompson submachine gun that is on relatively small maps that basically can excel at being in CQC combat and in enclosed environments. Same you can be said for like a lot of the vehicles as well, and so on and so forth. Like, if I can bring the M1919A6 to Tunisia, that's gonna be like, that is gonna become like really bad. Like the game is gonna become really bad because the M1919A6, it can exceed over fucking 400 meters without dropping a lot of damage. 400 meters in Enlisted is quite a lot because in the measurement in units will, well, pretty much always stay relatively close to its damage. So if it actually is 400, it's gonna still count in 450. So 450 and 500 is like between 450, like 500 and 600 right here. It's still gonna do something like probably like 6.3 damage, which is basically what the what is it called, the M2 carbine can actually like do in CQC combat. So at like 450, like to 500 meters, you can still exceed a lot of damage without pretty much really any drawbacks. The Browning has little to no recoil as well, so yeah. You have other things in here that I could go to say that, like, I'm worried. The same as the P47, right? If that can get into Tunisia, I really hope it can't. That is gonna be hell. Same with the M2 carbine. Like, there's a lot of things that I can just say that if Gaijin do not execute this patch correctly, and it's gonna be like the maps are gonna be, you're gonna be able to pull it off, like pull you like weapons into maps there where it actually isn't supposed to be, we're gonna have games where you are actually gonna get like super unbalanced matches, like super duper unbalanced matches. And to be fair, like for the better or for the worst, I would say that yeah, I do understand they're doing this because it's from a lot of requests, but I would go to say that from my experience, this is not gonna be a very good update because we have tried this in War Thunder for years now, and like nobody have ever come to a conclusion in War Thunder what should be at what rate and battle ratings and so forth and where things should be still to this day. And now we're applying it to yet another game, yet we haven't figured out the whole system itself yet as of a whole in War Thunder, which is the original game with battle rating systems. So I'm really worried because like quite clearly I do care about this game. I'm gonna be honest. I do care for Enlisted, and I do care for the fact that like this game potentially could go down the gutter, right? Because even how much people say like, oh yeah, this patch is gonna be great, and how much ever it's gonna be like, it's gonna be a fix for the game. It's not always the case because I've experienced the exact thing way back in my days as well. I have played a lot of like World War II shooters that has tried to fix a lot of these balance things in like World War II games. Yet another thing I can actually add right away here that I'm wondering if they're actually gonna, because like I'm not sure, but I feel like if they add yeah, this. I tried this in the beta, by the way, or the not the beta, but the test server, right? The M19A1, and you can actually get this thing into to Normandy, and in Normandy the M19A4 or the M1941, right? The Johnson LMG, right? It's exceedingly well on Normandy. Like it's way too good on Normandy. I would almost go to say that this is a straight replacement. If after the patch they allowed us to get into Normandy, this is gonna be a like direct replacement for all my 1919 A6s. Simply for the fact that it can have slow fire and it can have a high RPM and it has good damage, has good like fire rates. It reloads real quick. It has minimal drawbacks, right? And it's like I don't know. I hope Gaijin has seen that, and I hope that people have said something about this. But I can't say anything yet because I do not know. I don't have any info about it. But I gotta say, like, I'm a bit worried, to say the least. And a lot of the like content creators seems extremely supportive of this, except for maybe a few that is critical thinking of the updates. I am one of the more critical people because even though it might be the greatest thing ever, it also could become a very like it could very easily turn like the wind could turn quick, right? And that's what I'm worried for, is that the game might get a very positive from this update, but at the same time it could be absolutely vice versa. And yeah, but let me know about your honestly like opinion and everything about this in the comment section, like because like at the moment I'm I'm a bit scared. I'm a bit worried for Enlisted. I'm worried for its future, and I'm worried for like just for the fact that like I like this game. I play this game. I played previous games that I've seen almost the same case happen, and what happened to them is often the time they just fail and things happen negatively in the long term. And I'm just worried for the fact that that is gonna apply for Enlisted as well, and we're gonna end up with a game that just dead in the water. And hear me out. Maybe this is like maybe I'm just very like what they people what the kids call these days schizo, you know. But I'm extremely worried for the fact that like the game's balance is just gonna be thrown off the charts because of the fact that we are just gonna mix and blend everything everywhere, and that's what makes me really worried, like extremely worried because of like yeah, it might get fun for a few people, but it might not end up being fun for everyone, and that's the thing. Like I've experienced imbalances in my days in games, and the fact that like you make even more imbalances in the game is not gonna make the game more fun, and that's from experience, right? That's just from me playing a lot of games and being active in Enlisted and in previous games, knowing what happens and what happened a lot of the times. And if anyone wants to hear my stories of FPS games, I'm a fucking like I'm gonna be real. I'm a seasoned veteran for like all World War II shooters. You could probably almost ask me about any World War II shooter, and I've played it sometime or like done something about it, like played it. And you can of course ask me to play them. I don't mind at all, like at all, because every bit of comments and like so forth is welcome as long as it's not verbal like insultion or something like that. But like honestly, I'm worried for Enlisted. I hope that they rethink what they did at least in the test server, and I hope things goes for the better change. We can say it that way. But I'm gonna quit it here, guys. I hope you guys will have a great time with this patch once it comes out, and I hope that Enlisted actually grips around the game and does something positive about this, because yeah, I'm saying this for the whole player's sake, like the whole player base's sake, not for my own. And yeah, but that's pretty much for me, and I'll see you next time.